Anthony Barajas died in a hospital bed on July 31st, 2021. He was just 19 years old. For 5 agonizing days, he fought to survive after a bullet tore through his eye and into his brain. His family watched helplessly as machines kept him breathing. His date, 18-year-old Rylee Goodrich, never even made it to the hospital. She died instantly when a stranger shot her in the back of the head during a movie. They were on their first date. Neither saw the gunman approach, neither had a chance to run. Neither had ever met the man who would end their lives. Their killer's reason was as outrageous as the ending of this first date. This is the heartbreaking story of Rylee Goodrich and Anthony Barajas. The Regal Edwards Theater in Corona, California stood silent on the night of July 26, 2021. Moviegoers had left, staff began their cleaning routine, and then came the scream. An employee had entered Theater 1 expecting empty seats and scattered popcorn. What they found instead haunts them still. 2 teenagers slumped in their chairs, blood everywhere. One already gone, and one barely breathing. Anthony couldn't talk though. He was just staring into the void, clinging to life. And even if he couldn't talk, it's not like he could have told the officers much. Everything happened so fast.
An 18-year-old woman was shot in the head and died. Her 19-year-old friend was shot and is on life support.
They just wanted to see a movie. 6 tickets sold that night. 6 people in a nearly empty theater watching The Forever Purge, a fictional horror film about a night when all crime is legal. Yeah, I know you know The Purge, but the irony in this story is shocking. For Rylee and Anthony, fiction became a devastating reality. While the movie played, someone came up behind them and fired. No warning, no mercy. Their first date became their last.
This is 18-year-old Rylee Goodrich and 19-year-old Anthony Barajas. The 2 teenagers were seeing a movie together last night at the Edwards 18 in Corona.
5 days later, Anthony succumbed to his injuries. Their killer never even knew their names.
But it doesn't even matter. There's no happily ever after.
Anthony wasn't famous because he was different from the rest of us. He was famous because he was exactly like us, just with this incredible gift for making people feel seen. Yeah, he had almost 1 million TikTok followers. His @It's Anthony Michael account blew up, but talk to anyone who knew him and they'll tell you the same thing. Fame never changed who he was. Anthony was that friend who remembered your birthday without Facebook reminders, the guy who would text, "You okay?" when you posted something a little off, the one who'd make stupid jokes just to see you smile when you were having a bad day. His parents, Brian and Catherine, saw it from day one. This kid could walk into a room and talk to anyone. The shy kid in the corner, someone's grandma, whoever, didn't matter. He made connections like breathing. His mom said, from his quick smile to his compassionate heart, Anthony's presence was a gift to all who knew him. At school, Anthony dominated on the soccer field, practiced martial arts with the same focus he gave everything else. His TikToks weren't just thirst traps or dance trends. They were glimpses into his actual life, singing with his whole heart, pranking his family, traveling, just being real. That's why hundreds of thousands of people felt like they knew him, because in a way they did. Rylee was cut from that same cloth. Corona born and raised, the girl everyone wanted to be friends with. Not because she was the popular cheerleader, though she was, or because she killed it at volleyball, which she did that too. People gravitated to Rylee because she was real. No games, no drama, just this infectious energy that made you feel better just being around her. She was smart as hell too. She'd just received a scholarship to Grand Canyon University, marketing major with big dreams, the kind of student professors remember years later. That summer of 2021, she was just home visiting family before heading back to school and posting on her Instagram to her 20,000 followers. She was planning her future, enjoying the moment, and living the kind of normal, beautiful life we all want. If you scroll through her feed, you'll see a life bursting with possibilities. And if you knew what was coming next in their story, it would break your heart into a million pieces, because neither of them had any idea how little time they had left.
You don't expect to home from work and then finding out that your cousin was shot in the back of the head.
These weren't just victims in a headline. They were real people with inside jokes and favorite songs and texts waiting to be answered. With families who still set the table for them sometimes out of habit. With dreams that never got the chance to come true. The 4th of July, 2021. Fireworks exploded overhead as friends gathered to celebrate Independence Day. Among them were Anthony and Rylee. They'd never met before that night, but something sparked between them. Something pure and hopeful. They talked for hours, exchanged contact information, and continued connecting in the days that followed. Like any thoughtful daughter, Rylee wanted her parents to meet Anthony before their first official date. Her father was skeptical at first, especially when he heard Anthony was a TikTok influencer. He rolled his eyes, as fathers often do. But then he met Anthony, and everything changed. On their first date night, Anthony arrived with gifts, souvenirs from his recent trip to Hawaii, thoughtfully chosen for Rylee's entire family. Her father would later call it the sweetest thing I'd ever seen a 19-year-old do.
This girl was on a first date with this sweet boy that he just came back from Hawaii and gave us souvenirs. He doesn't even know us. He passed out souvenirs that night at my house. She was so happy. They were like these two little lovebirds, and it was finally a guy that Dad approved of, you know?
It was heartbreaking to hear Dave's voice break, realizing how fleeting his daughter's happiness was.
He was genuinely sweet, and I could tell that she really, really liked him.
Anthony took Rylee to her favorite restaurant, Wood Ranch. They enjoyed dinner, laughing, and getting to know each other better. Then they headed to the 9:35 p.m. showing of The Forever Purge at the Regal Edwards Theater. Throughout the evening, Rylee texted her mother updates. The last one said that the movie was a little boring, but she was enjoying the date because of Anthony. A few minutes later, she would be dead. What Rylee and Anthony couldn't see was the darkness lurking just a few rows behind them. Joseph Jimenez Jr., 20 years old, sat with 3 friends in the nearly empty theater. But Jimenez wasn't watching the Forever Purge unfold on screen. The real horror was in his head. Voices no one else could hear growing louder by the minute. For months, these voices had tormented him. Someone named Abigail whispering terrible things. For 8 months, medication had kept him at bay, but Jimenez had stopped taking his schizophrenia medication days earlier. He couldn't afford to refill his prescription. Now, Abigail was screaming. His friends noticed his deteriorating state immediately. The mumbling under his breath, the sudden shouts at nothing, the way his eyes darted around the theater as if tracking invisible threats. He kept talking to himself, growing more agitated with each passing minute. Even his own friends were getting scared of him. At one point during the film, Jimenez abruptly stood up, said he needed to use the bathroom, but he was lying. He walked straight to his car in the parking lot. When he returned minutes later, he carried a small box. His friends eyed it nervously. One of them asked, "What's in there?" To which Jimenez replied, "A gun." 3 pairs of eyes met in silent panic above their friend's head. Without speaking, they formed a desperate plan. They walked out saying they all needed the restroom, and they never returned. Here's where it gets infuriating though. These 3 didn't tell the ticket taker, didn't warn the concession stand worker, didn't call 911, didn't knock on the door to warn the young couple. They simply fled to their cars and drove away, leaving Rylee and Anthony alone with a man they now feared was dangerous. His friend Carlos later claimed, "If I had known what was going to happen, I would have tried to stop it somehow." Empty words that came way too late. Somehow, he says, it would have been as easy as dialing 911. Meanwhile, Jimenez rose from his seat, guided by his imaginary friend Abigail and the other voices. According to his later confession, they were warning him that teenagers of Corona wanted to kill him. He needed to strike first. He crept forward row by row until he stood directly behind Rylee and Anthony. They never felt him there, so they never even had a chance. Jimenez raised the gun and pressed it to the back of Rylee's head. He pulled the trigger. The gunshot, perfectly timed with the movie's violent soundtrack, went unnoticed by anyone outside the theater. Rylee slumped forward, instantly killed. Anthony, hearing something, turned to check on Rylee. In that instant of confusion, before he could process what had happened, Jimenez fired again. The bullet went through Anthony's eye and into his brain. 3 shots fired in total. The movie played on, oblivious to the real bloodshed in row 13. Jimenez stood over them for a moment, and then, with chilling calculation, he reached down and took Rylee's wallet. Not out of panic or confusion, but with deliberate intent. An act that prosecutors would later point to as evidence of his awareness of his actions. He tucked the gun away and walked out of the theater. Just another moviegoer leaving a late screening. No one stopped him or even noticed him. At 11:28 p.m., security cameras captured him running to his car and speeding away. Inside the theater, as the credits began to roll, Rylee and Anthony remained motionless in their seats. Blood pooled around them, soaking into the carpet. The cleanup crew wouldn't find them for another 20 minutes. By then, it was already too late. When the police began investigating, they had a few leads. The theater was dark, no surveillance footage captured the shooting, but they did have one crucial detail. Only 6 tickets had been sold for that showing.
Police officers have been going through all the footage, and they must have had some form of idea of list of who the suspect might be.
Anonymous tips led investigators to Joseph Gimna's house on Envoy Street in El Cerrito just one day after the shooting. During a search of his trailer, police found a firearm matching the caliber used in the attack and Rylee's stolen wallet. Gimnez was arrested immediately. The evidence was overwhelming. The gun matched, ballistics confirmed it was the weapon used. He had Rylee's wallet, and he even still had his ticket stub from the movie. Yet when confronted, Gimnez denied involvement. His 3 friends, tracked down by investigators, confirmed that they'd been at the theater with him. They described his increasingly erratic behavior that night, the mumbling, the talking to himself, the gun in the box. They admitted leaving out of fear, never imagining what would happen after they fled. When questioned further, Gimnez's story changed. He confessed to the killings, but claimed voices in his head, someone he called Abigail, had commanded him to do it. According to Gimnez, he suffered from schizophrenia. He hadn't been taking his medication for several days because he couldn't afford to refill his prescription. As the days passed without the medication, the voices grew louder. These voices, he claimed, warned him he was in danger, that the teenagers of Corona wanted to kill him. He bought a gun for protection, and then allegedly, at the command of those voices, he took the lives of 2 innocent young people he had never met. On July 31st, 2021, 5 days after the shooting, doctors delivered the news everyone had been dreading. Anthony Barajas had suffered brain death. Despite their desperate efforts, there was nothing more they could do. The news devastated not only his family, but thousands of fans who had been following his story, praying for his recovery. Even knowing how critical his condition was, they had clung to hope. As a final act of generosity, Anthony's organs were donated to save others, a testament to the kind of person he was. In death, as in life, he gave of himself. The families of both victims came together to mourn, joined by hundreds of grieving friends and community members. 2 bright lights extinguished far too soon. Rylee's father channeled his grief into a desperate question that still echoes today.
Metal detectors in theaters. I was just at a baseball game the same night. 40,000 people went through a metal detector. Not one gun was in there. 200 people went to a movie theater and somebody brought a gun in. You know, so how hard is that?
His question strikes at the heart of a painful reality. Simple security measures might have prevented this tragedy. Metal detectors, standard at sporting events and concerts, remain absent in most movie theaters across America. As the families struggled to cope with their unimaginable loss, the legal system began its slow grind towards justice.
Look at me, bro. Look at me.
No.
Look at me.
Yeah, how would you feel if your daughter's killer was walking past you with a blank stare?
When he walked by me, I was just like pure rage. Like I couldn't even think of the words to say, but I knew that I had a window and I just wanted him to look at me.
Hey, look at me, bro.
Joseph Gimnez Jr. initially pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. His lawyer argued that schizophrenia had rendered him completely mentally unbalanced at the time of the killings. Tests confirmed he indeed suffered from the disorder, but evidence suggested he wasn't as mentally incapacitated as he claimed. The prosecution presented videos Gimnez had filmed on his cell phone the day of the murders, showing largely normal behavior. They also pointed to his theft of Rylee's wallet as evidence evidence. He knew exactly what he was doing. The legal process dragged on for nearly 3 years, concluding in February 2024. One of Jimenez's friends, Carlos Gonzalez, testified during the trial. He described how Joseph suddenly began acting strangely that night at the theater.
Carlos Gonzalez taking the stand for the first time, recalling how prior to the movie, Jimenez had been acting strange and muttering to himself at dinner.
At the trial's conclusion, the judge determined Jimenez was legally sane when he committed the murders. He was fully aware of his actions.
Court calls it a matter of People versus Joseph Jimenez.
Joseph Jimenez Jr. was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. He now resides in a California state prison where he will spend the rest of his days. But no prison sentence can bring back Rylee and Anthony. No verdict can fill the void their absence leaves. For the families of Rylee and Anthony, justice feels hollow. A life sentence doesn't resurrect their children. It doesn't fill the emptiness at dinner tables or ease the pain of birthdays now marked as grave sites. Their futures, whatever brilliant, unexpected paths they may have chose, were stolen in an instant. The marketing degree Rylee worked so hard for, the creative vision Anthony was just beginning to realize, the relationships they might have built, the impact they could have made, all vanished. The what ifs those left behind. What if Jimenez had access to affordable medication? What if his friends had warned someone? What if theaters had basic security measures? What if they had chosen a different movie that night? These questions expose painful truths about our systems. Mental health care remains catastrophically broken. Someone diagnosed with schizophrenia, a condition rarely linked to violence when properly treated, couldn't afford medication that might have prevented tragedy. Yet, discussions about solutions quickly fracture. Should we force compliance with treatment plans, create better monitoring systems, implement stricter gun control? Each proposed solution raises thorny questions about civil liberties, practicality, and effectiveness. Meanwhile, the Regal Edwards Theater has reopened with new security protocols, purse checks, and bag searches. A small, insufficient change that came too late for 2 young lives cut brutally short. And we can only wonder how many other places are waiting for a tragedy to happen to increase their security. At the end of the day, no policy debate can erase what matters most. 2 souls are gone. Their absence leaves wounds that will never fully heal, in families and a community forever changed by a tragedy that shouldn't have happened to anyone. In death, as in life, Anthony and Rylee continue to touch lives. Anthony's organs saved multiple people in need of transplants. His TikTok account stands as a memorial to his spirit, and hundreds of moments of joy, creativity, and connection frozen in digital amber. Memorials for both victims overflowed with flowers, photos, and heartfelt messages. Thousands who never met them in life mourned their passing, drawn by the stark injustice of their deaths and the light they brought to the world. Their story serves as a painful reminder of how quickly life can change. It reminds us to cherish every moment, to tell our loved ones how much they mean to us, to never take for granted the time we have together. Because sometimes, tragically, a goodbye can be forever. Why do we protect baseball stadiums with metal detectors, but not movie theaters? How many more families must plan unexpected funerals before we fix a mental health care system that abandons the sick until they become dangerous? Would Anthony and Rylee still be alive if any single person had made a different choice that night? Leave your thoughts in a comment. If this story moved you, please like and subscribe. Your support helps these stories be told. For another case that'll leave you questioning our system, click the video on the screen now. See you soon, and stay safe.